BuyBlack Podcast, Episode 20, Failing Forward. My interview with financial planner Curtis May on his podcast, The Practical Wealth Show.
Welcome to BuyBlack, the only podcast dedicated to helping you find, connect with, and support Black-owned businesses. We're on a mission to bring consumers and business owners together to ignite the global Black economy. I'm your host, Gerald Jones, and if you're a Black business owner or a socially conscious consumer, you've joined the right community. Ready? Let's get to work.
Hey guys, welcome back to BuyBlack. It is Christmas night. Yes, I am recording this episode on Christmas night because I have been busy, very, very busy over the last week and a half trying to finalize and get the BuyBlackPodcast.com website up, y'all. We could not go into 2018 without having the website up. So I've been spending a lot of my time working on that, and guess what? The site is live. That is correct. All the basic functionality of BuyBlack Podcast is up. I think it looks great, and I've just got a little bit more to do as far as fixing some visual elements, filling out some of the content, but otherwise the show is absolutely ready to use. So with that said, I want to start this episode off today by giving you that call to action. I want you, if you are a listener of this show, to go check out BuyBlackPodcast.com. I really need your feedback on what I can do to make this website the absolute best and most useful it can be for you, for the community. As it's set up right now, the website has three components to it. We've got the episode section where you can go back through all the archive and listen to any of the episodes on the show. We've also got the Black-owned business directory, which you can actually add new businesses into the directory, even if it's not your business. All the standard listings on there are free. You go to the website, you'll see how all that stuff is set up. And then I also have a section that is called a resource list. And I got this idea from Mike De Los Santos. If you remember back to episode 6, Mike D's Barbecue, Mike is full of great ideas. And a while back he said, man, you know what we really need is we need a place to curate all the curators, because there's way too many business directories and resources and all this other stuff. You don't know where to go. And I took that to heart and I said, okay, well, why don't I create a list of all the lists? And so that also exists in this website. Now, right now, the business directory and the resource list are pretty much empty, but I've got the functionality in there. And the great thing is that anybody listening to this show, anybody that you connect with, that you talk to, and you send them to BuyBlackPodcast.com, you can go in there and you can recommend links, you can recommend businesses, you can add them to either the resource list or the business directory. And so we can start building this thing out and start building resources for the community right now. And anybody can do it. So I love the functionality that's built into that, but I want you guys to get in there and play with it. I want you to break it. I want you to add stuff to it, because the sooner that we build this thing out and have all the resources in one spot, the sooner we can start getting on one page and actually moving forward and not having questions about where do I go to get this? Where do I go to get that? What's the best website? You can go to my website. You can find them all there. You can rate businesses. You can rate resources. And so after a while, once we get enough data in there, you'll be able to know which resources are best, which ones are okay, which ones are not, because people are going to rate them for you. So I'm running my mouth a lot about that, but I'm really excited about it. This has been a long time coming, but it's finally here. So moving past that, let's talk about today's show. A few days ago, I did an interview with a guy named Curtis May. Curtis is a financial planner. He works out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And we met actually a few weeks ago through his podcast producer. I've never met Spencer before, but apparently Spencer had heard one of the episodes or a few of the episodes, and he recommended me to Curtis. Curtis and I got on the phone. We talked for a while and realized, man, we have way too much in common. I need to have you on my show. No, I need to have you on my show. So we decided that we were going to, have each other on each other's shows. But rather than doing two different interviews back to back, which was our original plan. She said, man, how about you interview me and then you interject as much information and financial knowledge as you want to while you're interviewing me, because I know that your audience wants to hear that anyway. And then we'll get this interview on my show as well. And as my audience hears what you're talking about, they're going to want to hear from you. They'll be calling me and saying, hey, you got to have Curtis on so we can talk more about prosperity economics, which is what his entire mentality, his entire model is based on. And I love it. So you're going to listen to this episode. It's going to be a lot of me talking about what guided me to start this project. And then a lot of stuff you guys haven't actually heard yet too, which is great, talking about the online businesses and the way that I pick products and things like that. But then you're also going to hear from Curtis, who is a real life financial planner, financial advisor. And he goes by the nickname, the Contrarian, because he doesn't give that same normal, boring, go put your money in Wall Street, get your, 5 to 8% in mutual funds type of advice. He's got a completely different model that he talks about, and it fits a lot with my mentality about building wealth. And I hope that it's going to connect with you guys too. So we'll get into this episode. When the episode ends, I'm going to have a quick couple of links for you if you want to reach out to Curtis in order to either schedule an appointment or a meeting with him to talk about financial planning or learn more about prosperity economics. I'm going to get you that link. And then also he gives away a free ebook if you just want to read it for yourself to learn more about prosperity economics and how that works and how it can work for your family. He gives away a free ebook, and I'm going to give you the link to get that when the episode is over as well. So I really appreciate you guys sticking with me through this December. I know the episodes have been sparse, but it's not because I've just been kind of hanging out and doing nothing. I've been head down, knocking this website out, and I'm really proud of it. So again, get in there, check out the website, send people to the website, connect with it. And that's it. All right, let's get into the show.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is Curtis May, the host of the Practical Wealth Show. Welcome back. I want to thank you guys for listening. So today we have a special guest on. It was funny because it was introduced to me by my producer, who you've heard on another podcast, Spencer, and that we had, kind of similar messages. So we decided that we wanted to talk to each other. So we spoke for the first time a couple weeks ago and realized we were brothers separated, and had a lot of the same ideology. So what I wanted to, and so the title of this podcast is Failing Forward. Okay. And so what I want to introduce you guys to Gerald Jones, he's the host of his own podcast called BuyBlackPodcast.com. Say hello, Gerald, to my listeners.
Hey, everybody. How y'all doing today?
We're doing good. We're doing really good. Excited to have you. So tell me, Gerald, as we get started, tell my listeners a little bit about your journey and, where you came from and what got you started into podcasts. Let's kind of go down that path a little bit.
That works for me. So quick question on that. How far back you want me to go? Because I can go all the way back.
Don't go all the way back. Let's see.
Right.
I was, don't take me to high school, but let me see. Go as far as wherever relevant. I'm going to let you do your thing.
All right. So we'll go back to whatever's relevant. So I will go back about, let's put it about 10, 15 years, and I can run through that real quick.
Okay.
As a young man, I was in the Marine Corps, and I was in a Marine Corps Reserve unit out of Arkansas. I was surrounded by a bunch of Marines who were from Arkansas and all the different areas around Arkansas, and none of them looked like me, and none of their political beliefs were like mine, and so my political beliefs became a lot like theirs. And so when I was younger, I had this very I want to call it conservative, and not in a good way, but in a very negative about myself, negative about Black people way of looking at the world. I'm not ashamed to talk about it now because I've grown up, I've grown smarter. But I lived in that world for a very long time. I was in a state of feeling like Black people mistreated me because I talked different, I thought different, I did this, that, and the other, and I was really bitter about that. And then, so time passes, careers change, we grow up, yada, yada, yada. Let's fast forward to about 2016. 2016, I am in the process of finishing my my bachelor's degree. 15 years in the making. All right, so best bachelor's degree in the whole wide world. I put 15 years effort into getting it, and around that time, I had to take a couple of courses that were on diversity and on these different things, and they didn't really jive with my political beliefs. However, they forced me to think about my thought processes, and they forced me to think about my history and the reasons why I believed and thought the things that I did about myself, about my people, and really started changing the way that I looked at the world. So finished those classes. I finished my degree in May of 2016, and then I started looking for my next project because I've always been a really good employee. I've always been an incredible employee, actually. Really good salary, really good job. Never really thought about entrepreneurship. But when I finished my degree, I got this degree in business administration. I was having some troubles at my company. I was dealing with some people who were basically telling me, you're not as smart as you think you are. You're not as good as you think you are. So sit down somewhere. And I was like, I'm actually smarter than you. I'm better than you. So how about I just leave and I'll go do my own thing? And so I started making plans to leave. I was like, I can do this for myself. I can be an entrepreneur because I'm working for people who are nowhere near as good as me at this. And so that's kind of where that bug started. And I started thinking, what am I going to do now that I've got this degree? And I started looking for projects, and I started building things. And 2 months later, July 5th, 2016, I see the same video that everybody else sees of Alton Sterling being murdered in Baton Rouge. And then less than 24 hours later, I'm watching a video of Philando Castile also being murdered, now up in Minneapolis. And more than any other events that had occurred like that before, those broke my heart. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that my heart had already been broken open from its stone cold idiotic mentality, and it just flooded me with this knowledge that this is what I'm put on earth to do. My mission is to somehow change my reality and the reality of my people, of Black people, through positive economic growth, political growth, whatever you want to call it. I've got to take all this knowledge, all this experience that I have, and I've got to put it to work for my family, my people, because that's who needs it. I need it. My kids need it. Other people's kids need it. And ain't nobody going to give it to us unless we do it ourselves. So that was what started me down this road. And at that point, podcasting was nowhere in sight. You know, fast forward 4 or 5 months later, I'm introduced to this incredible podcast called Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. It's hosted by a guy named Jay Jones, who I talked to you about. And I start listening to Jay's show, and I start getting these great ideas about business ideas, and I start trying different things. And then I start realizing, you know what? I have a lot of stuff I want to talk about. I should do a podcast. You know, I've got this really great microphone that I got. I should do a podcast. What am I going to do a podcast about? And over maybe 3-4 more months, I'm trying to figure out a podcast idea where I don't have to do all the talking, because people will get tired of that. Like, who am I going to interview? What am I going to interview people about? And I just happened to connect with a friend of mine that I went to church with as a kid. I go check out her Facebook page, and she's got all these Black-owned businesses that she is just posting links and articles to back to back to back for weeks on end. And it's just because she wants to. It's just because she's passionate about helping these businesses get more exposure. And I was like, Black-owned businesses need more exposure. And I need a podcast idea. I need a podcast idea that fits my mission. BuyBlack podcast.
That's
Okay.
got to be
Here
out
we
there.
go.
Somebody's already doing that, right? And I go, look, there's no BuyBlack podcast. There's got to be. Somebody's got to be doing one. There's not. And so I immediately I jumped on it. I started shooting out emails to business owners. I shot 20 emails out. I got 10 people who responded. I got 5 who committed before I even had a podcast put together. So I knew right then, I got a 50% return rate on a cold email and a 25% total take of, yes, I want to be a part of this. I was like, I must be scratching an itch. Go farther, go faster. And so over the course of 2 months between May to July of 2017, I put this podcast together, kind of cobbled together a few free apps, a few kind of paid apps, and learned how to do hosting and all that kind of stuff. Learned how to do editing, and then on July 5th of this year, I launched my first episode of BuyBlack podcast, and I really wanted to meet that date of July 5th. In honor of Alton Sterling and then, of course, Philando Castile. So that's the very long and very short version of what got me here.
That's cool because one of the reasons we titled the show Failing Forward, because Gerald told me, listen, he just kind of gets in and he doesn't have, my father used to always tell me, you learn by screwing up, right? And so you got to try stuff and then you got to make adjustments. So, what I want you to hear is that, okay, he had an idea and he took action. Tony Robbins calls this personal power, which is the ability to get yourself to take action, right? Is one of the lessons I want you to take from this, because I was at a meeting today, and it was a couple of other business owners. Oh, you got a podcast, da da da. I got to talk to you about how to do that. So I figured, all right, let me talk to somebody else about that also, because we both got about the same amount of episodes out there. You might have started about a month from our conversation. When did you start? Like last July?
Yeah, I started July 5th, and I started out doing 2 episodes a week. So I've got it says I'm at episode 19, but I've actually got 29 episodes out because I was doing like episode 1 and episode 1B, then 2, then 2B.
Okay.
And then I was like, man, that's too much. I got a real career. I got a family. I can only do 1 a week. And so it kind of slowed down.
And so, but he's interviewing other people. So tip there is, if you have an expertise or you can interview people and create content for yourself and create a platform to get yourself and get your message out there, but you got a message. So let's talk about Buying Black. One of the things that we both, I don't know if you read it yet, we and I met Maggie from Maggie's List from Our Black Year, which was basically her journey as an upper middle income family, searching to spend a majority of her income with African American owned businesses, right? And so, and it was a challenge to do that. So we and there was a study she did, listen, if we could spend 10% of our income, it was something crazy. You could create 100,000 jobs or something like that.
Yeah, it was a crazy number that she was talking about for a very small change in habits.
Yeah.
And I read that book. I actually had when I told a friend here locally, I'm in a men's ministry group with a bunch of other men, and I told them that I had this idea, and one of them said, you need to read this book. He brought it, he gave it to me, and I read it. And it was amazing to me. The most amazing thing to me about that book, the thing that told me this is a long road ahead, don't think you're about to go out here and change the world, was the fact that they were in Chicago. Mm-hmm. They were in one of the largest cities in the United States, and with a huge Black population. I mean, there's 2.7 million people in Chicago, a huge amount of them Black, and yet they were struggling to meet their basic needs buying from Black-owned businesses. It was just, you don't know just how far behind the power curve we are until you read a book like that, or you go out and you try to find Black-owned businesses to throw your support behind.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we talked last when we first were talking. I'm a third generation entrepreneur, or, like my grandfather was in business here in Philly and employed, hear my family stories, 25, 30 people, had a sewing factory. And this is in the 50s, folks. Okay. And, my father he said he only worked for somebody. He went to the Air Force and, but he came out, he worked for somebody for like maybe 6 months. And then he had hustles and he had a store in high school. He had a car at like 16 in the 50s, and he had a dry cleaning business. And, I always heard you'll never make any money work for somebody else, from the time I was 7. And so I always tell people, I was speaking to these college students, I said, listen, I never got that. Go to school, get your education, get a good job talk. And in my mind, a job was risky because I always tell people, look, you could get fired for one of two reasons, any reason or no reason at all. And so, and it's not all. And so one of the main things that it's not all bright lights and glamour, and everybody is not cut out to do that. But one of the things that we talk about is that you can be at least an entrepreneurial thinker, right? Because even within your corporate situation, you can be creative, because in that position, you got to figure out, okay, you can't just be there, and you have to think, all right, which side are you on? The revenue generating side of the ledger, right? Because if their business slows down, because everybody wants to be the project director of this and the manager of that, and I've got this title, but if you're either in sales or you're in sales support, right? And so if sales drop, there's no revenue, and your butt's going to get fired.
Absolutely.
And or what they call it in the government, subject to a reduction in force, right? And
that's a good way to put it, yeah.
Right.
And the interesting thing with what you're talking about there as well is, so looking at being like an entrepreneur. So my job, I'm a consultant by trade. So I work for one of these big consulting firms, and it's exactly what you're saying. You can go in and you can get onto a contract. We do a lot of stuff with the government, and you can get a nice contractor gig, and you've got your nice little statement of work there, and it says you're here to do this and this exact thing alone. And you can go into work and you can do that exact thing for as long as that contract is there. But guess what? As soon as that contract is over with, you are out the door, because all you are is a widget to them. And you could be that person, or you can be the one who comes in and says, okay, this is what I'm contracted to do, but here are the problems that need to be solved, and I'm going to figure out a way to solve them. And when you become that person, your job becomes way much more secure, because either, the company that you're with, if their contract ends, they're going to keep you and try to put you on a different contract. Or the place where you're doing your contract and work, if that contract ends, those people are going to say, well, whoever it is that you guys get this contract to, you need to hire that guy. I don't want him gone. I don't want her gone. And so just being an intrapreneur in and of itself, being the person who's solving problems and finding new cool ways to do things, and then selling it to people and helping them buy into it. I mean, that person is priceless, whether it's in a big corporation or whether it's starting your own corporation. And I've learned that over the last, 7 years. I've been literally an entrepreneur. But over the last year, it's ramped up, because not only do I still have that same mentality of I'm going to be the best employee that you can find, but I'm also building my own stuff. And so when I'm reading books and then trying things out with my own projects and they work, I go back to the office and I see a problem that my client has, and I'm like, I've got the solution for that. You've never seen it before, because I literally just learned it from a book that came out last month, right? And so I'm still creating that value, because as an entrepreneur on my own time, I'm taking that I'm learning and I'm feeding it into my company and my clients. And so it's just a win-win-win.
It's a win-win. And that's so important, because your income is a direct proportion to the value that you bring to the marketplace, right? And so you can't wait for Congress to legislate your success. You know what I mean? You've got to look for ways to create value first, right? You got to give first. You got to and solve problems, because if you're, if they're paying you 100 grand, or let's say you went to a corporation and you learn how to analyze and look for problems. You need to embrace problems. I told these kids that I was talking to these ex-offenders, and I said, listen, if I might not even have a job, but if I could go and I'm looking at your business and I'm seeing, all right, I'm analyzing it and I see an opportunity where you could be generating, another $500,000 a year in sales. And if you hire me, I'll show you my proposal and I'll show you how to do it if I get to run that division. Well, guess what? You think they will pay you 100 grand?
Easy.
Easy. Or
Easy.
so, because you just created, you're not $100,000 cost. You created $400,000, $100,000 investment for them to create another $400,000 in revenue, right? And so that's how you got to approach it. You got to recognize, where you fit and the kind of revenue you're bringing to the business. A young lady that has a business, her name is Sanaya. She has a company called Girlfriends Connect. Actually, I want to reach out to her. So if you hear this, holler at me. But one of the things she does is help people negotiate their salaries, right? Because so the first, I teach a strategy called the Money for Life, and so the first segment of that is get money. So you got to earn, you got to get more money coming in the house, right? And so if you're working, you need to figure out how to make yourself more valuable, and then we move through the prosperity economics. But you've got to learn to which is right out of Richest Man in Babylon. Part of all you earn is yours to keep. But if you can increase your earnings, then if I want you saving 10%, if I can get that part up, then you can save more money.
Right.
And so it starts with it because, see, you're the CEO of your life. I don't care where the revenue comes from. You are in business for yourself. Because, what I talk to people about is your personal economy, right? Because, George, you can't control the economy at large, but can you control your production and consumption as a family?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can definitely attest to that. And that is 100% mentality is really all it is.
Yes.
I can look all the way back. This is 2017 now. So I can go all the way back to 2005 when I was selling cars and I got fired from selling cars and I was literally on unemployment and living in a 1-bedroom apartment with no college degree. And by the way, that's when I met my wife, by the way, and she still didn't, she still dated me. I don't know why, but I was in that time period, and I knew at that point, I was like, I want to work for AT&T. I want to sell cell phones because I'm a great salesperson. I can't get a job anywhere else doing that and making the money I know people are selling these cell phones for. And so I went on interviews with this one company over and over and over again. I got denied over and over and over again. I knew I was going to work for AT&T, and I knew when I did, I was going to shine. And then I finally got a part-time job with them, and I told the manager, within a month, you're going to want to move me to full-time. And of course, well, you have to be here a year, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. A month later, they moved me to full time because I was making them money and I was making me money. And from that time all the way through the recession and the recovery and everything like that, my income level has gone nothing but up because once I got that one job, I was looking at where's my next form of income coming in? Where's my next opportunity? And it's not a matter of how do I leave this to go to the next thing. It's how do I stack? How do I keep this and then figure out a way I can make more money and find more opportunity? And it literally led me up to the point where I was like, okay, well, I'm at a point where I'm making a really good salary at this one spot. I've got this side job in the military that makes me a little bit of money. Let me figure out how I can start creating my own money to supplement even further on that. And if you're constantly in that mentality that you just said of how do I take control of my personal economy and force more money to wring from this tree, you'll I can't say you'll never, but you'll rarely see your income go backwards because it's one of those things where once you're in a position where you're creating a certain amount of money in this one spot, you know what it takes to keep creating that. And then you're just looking for the next thing to build on top of it. But that's all mentality.
It's all mentality. You stack it. Security is the ability to produce. and so there is no security. It's just only opportunity. And so, you've got to start to, and so it starts with, like we talk about, and I'll put this in the show notes, the 7 principles of prosperity. But the first principle is think, right? Which is, we mean by think, you need to own a prosperity mindset. Poverty and scarcity thinking keeps you stuck. Right. And so you've got to, like, you can't scrimp your way to wealth. I tell people I don't like budgeting. I like cash flow management, because budgeting is a scarcity, backward looking, live on less than you make. Whereas I want you to focus on how can you create more value, and grow your revenue. That's what CEOs do. You're the CEO of your life. So you have to grow revenue. You got to manage your expenses. I talk to people about creating a lifestyle ceiling. So if you're getting by on $5,000 a month, and all of a sudden, your income goes from, your income is 6, your expenses are 5, great. And if you take it to 10, don't automatically adjust your lifestyle to 10. So we call it Parkinson's law, which says that expenses rise to meet income. You need to create a lifestyle ceiling at 5 for a few years. And so now that 5, you can now compress your time frame to financial independence. So you can save and you can buy assets, and invest. One of the things that we teach in Prosperity Economics is you want to buy assets that send you a check every month, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't eat equity. Most people are taught how to they basically invest for capital gains. They're buying this stock, or right now the whole craze is buying Bitcoin.
Oh, the cryptocurrencies. Yeah, I've got so many friends who are trying to get into that.
Yeah, and so you can do that. But I just left the barbershop, so we were just talking about that. So listen, I'm very process oriented, right? So there's a way to do that, but because see, here's the thing: when I talk about investing, I'm kind of anti-Wall Street financial advisor. So if you share with your listeners, there's a difference. So you don't know anybody like me. So my nickname is a contrarian. So if you go right, I want to go left just because, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started out, a typical, max out your 401k, buy term investor difference, mutual funds were the end all be all. And then I read a little purple book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that just rocked my world. And, it didn't happen right away, but over a few years, my whole belief system changed. And what I realized, there's 2 schools of thought taught in personal finance. So and so see, at the core, you got to do what Gerald did, right? You got to improve your skills. You got to have confidence in yourself. You got to make money, right? But most people transfer the majority of their wealth away to people that create the situations, control the outcomes, so that they profit off of you not understanding the money game. Taxes, right? So right now this whole tax thing is coming about. Well, it's not a tax going to do anything for you if you don't have a business.
Not at all.
You know what I mean? So understand there's 2 tax codes, one for wage earners, one for business owners. So you've got to understand, because there's more opportunity. Here's the thing: when people chase returns, there's actually more opportunity in minimizing the losses in your life than you'll ever make trying to find winning investments. Okay, so a penny saved is a penny earned. So you got to start with stop giving your damn money away.
So let me jump in on that real quick, because I just had I had a really good conversation with my wife and my daughter the other day. My daughter's 9 years old, and we were having a conversation very much like this about the difference between quote unquote investing and then really investing, because she was helping me. This is going to sound kind of funny, but she was helping me to unload 134 audiobooks from the back of our truck. They were actually Bibles. It was like the new international version of the Bible. I found at a store that was going out of business, and I made a deal with the liquidator. I got them for dirt cheap, and I said, I'll take all these off your hands for this price. And I got them. Now, why did I do that? Because I knew that particular item was selling online for about 5 times the price of what I got them for. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, yes, I'm going to make this
quote unquote investment. And let's just take a round number. It's not a huge thing, but it's a great lesson. And it was a great lesson for my daughter. It cost me $1,000 to get these Bibles. That's what I put into them. I got 134 of these things. It was around $1,000, a little bit less than that. And I go and I put them into a spot where I know that people are going to buy them. And I know because I can already look at this platform and see they're selling at this rate. They're selling a lot of them a day at this price. Mm-hmm. So I have a ready-made source of income right there. I invested $1,000 to turn around and sell this asset that I invested in for $5,000. And then the platform, that it's on, they're going to take their cut. When it all comes down to it, I'm going to get a profit of about $2,000. So total, $3,000 in my pocket for $1,000 investment. And this all over the course of about 30 days or less. You compare that to, hey, I want to take $1,000 and I want to put it into a CD that's going to mature in 5 years at 2% interest. And that's being generous, saying 2%. Or right. I want to put it into a mutual fund that if things go great, I'm going to get 10% back at some point down the line. If they don't go so great, I might not get any of it back. It really depends on what happens with, and you have no control over any of that.
Right.
And the opposite of that is I look and I say, is this a good investment? How do I judge this investment? I don't know how to judge, a stock investment. I'm not that guy. I didn't go to school for that. But I can easily judge an investment and say, how much is it going to cost me to buy this? How much is it selling for on this platform? Do the numbers match out to where I will make money? And I can make that adjustment, or I can make that assessment literally right there on the spot and say, this is either a good investment or it's not. Pull the trigger or don't pull the trigger. And I can actually predict what's going to happen on the backside of it because I have control. And so I had that conversation with my daughter. And of course, it was slower than that, but it really kind of drilled into me because, when you're teaching somebody, reality really hits you. I was like, why would I ever invest, quote unquote, in something that I have absolutely no control over when there are so many investment opportunities around me that I can literally turn them into cash money just by putting money into something that I know is going to sell or that someone needs? Or
that's investing. See, I was talking to kids, look, and so what you describe is, I always tell people, I use Jim Rohn quote, profits are better than wages, right? Wages make you a living, profits make you a fortune. So you got to make your living by day, but you just bought something wholesale, sold it retail, that's making a profit, right? And what's even better, what did you just teach your daughter through your example? See, everybody's an example. You're either a good one or a bad one, right? And so why am I in business? Because my father is in business, and I thought you majored in business in school to go into business. Because that, once I realized the NBA wasn't looking for 5'11" shooting guards, I had to make a follow up
change.
A change. I was like, okay, here I am on this is not going to work out. And with a so handle, good jump shot, but 5'11", handle mediocre. All right, this is now when you can't make a living at it, it becomes your hobby. Somebody told me. And but yeah, these are the things. So let's talk about the shift you make as we wind down, because one of the things that we had a conversation was on buying blacks, which is here's the thing. I tell people, look, my first goal is to because what was funny was I wish I could get that quote. You had this comedian on one of your shows that was hilarious. That would open up your podcast about how they don't shop and this, and they're understocked and that kind of stuff. So as owners, you got to make sure your business is tight. We all have challenges, but you've got to be excellent. So I tell people, look, don't do business because I'm black. Okay, do business with me because I'm good. Okay, and I can bring value to your life. So and so money is green. So I care about you, and I want to make sure that you win. And my clients know that, bring value. We put money on the table. We improve their cash flow. We give their peace of mind, all that kind of stuff. So one of the things that we talked about was the not just buying, because buying leads into what? Consumerism. So
More
it goes back
consumerism.
to spend. You can't spend and you can't spend your way to wealth. So you have to get in the game, so to speak, and own some of your means of production, whether it's, and it doesn't have to be you go out and you get a storefront. I mean, I'm a big on, you can do Amazon sourcing, which is what Jay talks about in the show. He talks about a lot. Well, I listened to a few of his episodes also.
Okay, okay.
Of things that you can do and how to do them, how to do the Facebook ad, how to do, so there's stuff out there. And so one of the things that's great about Gerald figures this stuff out, again, failing forward till he figures out how to do it. But you had a mental shift. I don't know if I was the cause of this, but we talked about it a lot, which was, okay, because you've been interviewing entrepreneurs to showcase your stuff, but we have to build wealth, whereas more of us got to be in business. We need to tell me about that. Where's your thought process on that? Because I don't want to put words in your mouth.
So when I started out, it was I thought, and obviously this is a learning experience for me, which is what everything in this life is. So I started out and I was like, Black business owners fail at a rate that is astronomically high, especially compared to all the other demographics. And if I can help Black business owners get more access to an audience who wants to buy from them, if I can help them get free marketing where nobody else is given free marketing, and it's not 15 seconds or 30 seconds on a radio, you get 30 minutes to an hour. I've interviewed people for an hour, 2 hours on my show, and it is all just people getting to know them. Mm-hmm. I wanted to create a platform that would help those business owners get more access to an audience. And in my mind, I was like, this is going to start small, but you just stay consistent. You do it for a couple of years, 3 years, you get a huge audience. And now you've got something of value to give to people. And that's the other thing that's really important here, is that's another piece of the power of owning your platform. If you create something that didn't exist before from scratch, and you don't owe anybody for it, you can do whatever you want with it.
Right.
I don't have to go onto my platform and say, well, BuyBlack, but really it's about all my minorities. And what we really need to do is get everybody on the same, because I have to be beholden to somebody's ads. I have to be beholden to somebody else's idea of what is right. No, this is my platform. I know, because, I'm wearing this skin, that Black people need what it is that I'm given and are going to connect with what it is that I'm here to give. And I want to provide it to them, because I can look at the numbers and I can see, the Asian community, they're drastically overrepresented when it comes to business revenue as compared to the amount of businesses they actually own. Whereas Black businesses are drastically underrepresented in the amount of revenue that we bring in compared to the number of businesses that we have, which basically means our businesses, we have a lot more of them than people in the Asian community, and yet they are all failing. They are mostly failing. They're not bringing in a lot of money. So they need this.
So
I can take my platform and focus on that.
Just so give me 30 seconds on why your viewpoint, what are some of the challenges that you see with African-American entrepreneurs?
Some of the biggest challenges that we have is one that I hate this term, but I'll use it because people know it, the crabs in a barrel mentality.
Okay.
I don't really believe in that term, but what it really is this residual slave mentality that has been used to separate us from each other. It still works. We still look at somebody else Black, and if we know them and they're doing good, we expect them to give us stuff. And if they won't, then we want them to fail. If we don't know them and they're doing good, then we're jealous of them and we want them to fail. Or if we look at them and say, that's a Black-owned business and I don't want to shop at a Black-owned business because the white man's ice is colder. And so for whatever reason, we won't support each other. And we're the only community in the United States that will not do that. We're the only one. And it's not This is where I had to adjust my thinking over time. It's not something that is entirely our fault. It was designed. This nation was designed to get us to believe this way. And so it's going to take a lot of work to build us out of that mentality. It's not going to happen overnight. And the other side to that is that other demographics, they love to consume of us, but they don't want to consume from us. Mm-hmm. They want our hip hop. They want our culture. They want our clothes. They want our swag. They want all of it, but they don't want to buy it from us. They want to buy it from somebody else who's pimping us. Mm-hmm. And so when it all comes down to it, businesses owned by Black people, other demographics, unless it's a rib joint, they're not coming to it. And our demographic will look and say, I don't want that person to do better than me. And so it's so tough to break through that. And so based on what you were saying, what you were asking earlier, the shift that I had, I started out just wanting to support Black-owned businesses and BuyBlack. But as I was building out the podcast and as I was building the shows, and I was doing shows where I'm talking about, building a business model using a single sheet of paper, or, the differences between setting yourself up as a sole proprietorship versus an LLC versus an incorporation. What are the pros and cons of all of those things? These are things that I'm doing shows on because nobody ever taught me. You grew up in a household where you were surrounded by entrepreneurs. My grandfather was a pastor. My other grandfather was a mailman. My dad was a manager at a fast food restaurant, and my mom works in the insurance industry. And my grandparents and parents and aunts and uncles have all been incredible employees. I've got a huge amount of my family that's in the school system, in the education system in Little Rock, where I'm from. We are really great employees. You get a great job from getting a really good degree, maybe a master's. If you get the PhD, you are top stuff. But ultimately, you exist to work for somebody else and be comfortable. And that mentality is very pervasive in our community, and it didn't used to be. Mm-hmm. There was a time where we owned our own stuff. It just so happened that every time we would start making progress, the white community would come through and they would burn it down and kill a bunch of us, and we'd start over. And so there was a time where entrepreneurship was part of our makeup. And around the late 60s, early 70s, that was completely drummed out of our community. And now we're reaching this period, over the last 20, and I know I'm going on, but over the last 20 years, our education levels have been going up. We've got more bachelors, more masters, more doctorates, more young people who are coming into the world, and they're not just listening to what's being told to them. They're going out and reading for themselves. They're learning what the system is set up to be, and they're saying, I'm going to change it. And so now we're coming into this, what I like to call a renaissance of Black pride and ownership of our image and our culture, where we want to take control. This is the time, this is the generation that's going to lead for the next generation, who's going to actually break this bad cycle that we've been in for the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. And so instead of sitting in a situation where I want to help you buy from Black people who are already established, no. We are literally in a point where we are rebuilding the fabric of the Black community from the ground up. We're at a position where we've got the people in place, we got the education, we've got the knowledge, and we've got the desire to rebuild our community from the ground up. And so as you and I were talking, as I've been doing these shows, as I've been interviewing people, and I've gotten this feedback saying, hey, the interviews are nice, but man, I really love those episodes where you're just teaching us how to do this thing. I get more emails and more questions about those shows. People want to learn how to build. That's why Jay's show is so great. Mm-hmm. The Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Right. People want to learn how to build stuff. And so I want to change the focus from Buy Black to Build Black. Right. And it's everything. It's reconnecting with our history, understanding really what happened to us here and elsewhere, and how we can take all of that and turn it into power. Right. Understanding those skills that we had and reigniting them and literally building everything about our culture as a people up, including the economics, including the politics, including all of it. I want my show and my movement to be about building all of that. Right. Not just about more capitalism, only now you're spending your money elsewhere. No. everything about this is about building us up from scratch.
Okay. I like that. So as we conclude, because and that's because kind of the goal of the show of the Practical Wealth Show is like to me, there's many bullseyes in the community, but I've got one because to me, if you solve the economic problem, a lot of other things fall in line, right? And so the main thing that I want to get across is that listen, folks, you got to pull your own little red wagon, and the seeds of greatness are already inside of you. And, one of my messages is to stop looking for people outside of you to solve your problems. Okay. There's no politician going to solve your problem. I don't care who's in the White House. They can't keep you down and they're not going to help you win. That is, you build a community. I told this pastor one time from the bottom up, one family at a time, learning how to be productive, save, 10 to 15% of their income, learn how to improve their skills. And, inch by inch is a cinch. Now, what I try to do is teach people the real rules of the money game, because the game keeps you, because the thing is, there's two schools of thought taught. And I'm going to close with this. In the economic world, there's in regular personal finance, people are taught, buy and hold, dollar cost average, get out of debt, right? Buy term investor difference. But if you take a corporate finance course, that's all that Dave Ramsey, all that tip, the typical stuff that's taught to middle America. But if you listen to the words of a Shark Tank, of people with money, or Warren Buffett, they don't talk that way. Okay. Well, here's the stuff you hear if you took a corporate finance course. You hear things like cash flow, right? You hear things like velocity of money. You hear things like leverage. Leverage meaning this: if you have $100,000 in money, cash, and you got $100,000 in debt, you're not in debt. You have debt. You choose to have debt, but if you can make the $100,000 cost make more than $100,000 cost you, why would you pay the house off? I did a whole episode on why it's not a great idea to pay off the mortgage. Okay, and then so when you compare those two, the corporate strategies work in personal finance, and they're safer. Because so when we look at the cryptos and this and that, so let's talk about investing for a second. When I talk about investing, I always say this. I just want to, because I want to drill this in people's heads. Investment is something you put your money into where your principal is safe. So that means you put in 10 grand or 100 grand. How much you supposed to get back, Joe?
At a minimum, my 100 grand.
You have a reasonable opportunity to make a profit. So with those Bibles, your principal was safe, and you had a reasonable opportunity to make a profit. Why? Because he had, the operative word was there, control. Liquidity, use, and control. We call it CLUE in Prosper Economics. Control, liquidity, use, and equity is that's your foundation of your money. So that's kind of, I wanted to bring you a story of somebody that is failing forward, that's a regular guy that had an idea that wanted to make a difference in his community. Because where do you live at now? You live in Omaha.
I live in Omaha, Nebraska now. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Little Rock, Arkansas. See, and I'm here in Philadelphia, but yet technology has brought us together and to discuss problems, and so we can affect people that are getting this message out. So folks, you all have a story to tell. Your platform may not be a podcast, it may be YouTube, it may be you like I don't like writing, but I can talk, right? So I realized it wasn't going to be a blog. So and
I'm right there with you.
We transcribe the show, right? But what happens is, folks, you got greatness inside of you. And, one of the things, as I go into the new year, folks, I want you to recognize I don't care what color you are, right? But I always tell people, like, I'm Black. I happen to know a lot of Black people. So it's certain things I can say. People have told me, in the movement, Prosperity Economics movement, that the way I say it, I can get away with saying that other people can't say. So I'm trying to bring you all information that I know if I don't show it to you, you ain't going to hear it. Okay. And that's the power. So folks, I went a little long today, but we both, Joe and I can both talk.
Yeah, we
So,
can. And I know we went long. I have one question though.
yeah.
One thing you said I wanted to ask you to elaborate on.
Okay.
You said set a lifestyle ceiling. If you could just toss me three recommended things that people can do, three things they can focus on that would help them to set and maintain a lifestyle ceiling even when their income goes up, that would really be helpful, both for me and for anybody who might be listening, I
Well,
think.
all right. Step one, you got to, first of all, you got to track it. So most wealth is lost by how people manage cash flow or don't manage cash flow. So if you're running your household like a business, could you run a business very long if you didn't know what your income and your outgo was?
No way.
No. So that was gets measured, gets done. So do you have a baseline of money that it takes to operate your personal economy, right? So if you can, because here's what I want. All I want people to do is if you have debt. So I teach something called the 10-20-70 rule. So 10% to savings, 20% of your income to eliminate debt, and 70% to lifestyle. And I tell people, look, if you're saving 10 to 20% of your money, I really don't care what you do with the rest of it because you're going to grow your personal economy. But the first thing you got to do, awareness is the first step. So what we help people do is create. We give them software, or I have I'm actually I'm rolling out a it's called Wi-Fi, where I'll give people a do-it-yourself. Um, it's like affiliate program, full disclosure. But what I'm going to do is coach people on how to track this stuff. So once you know what that is, because see, it starts out with one, you got to know where you're at. Step one, right? It's like, in
Mm-hmm.
a mall, it's like you're here, right? Step two, where are you going? Where do you want to go? What is important to you about money? What are your goals? What's your financial, what I call your financial independence number? That is point B, right? So how do you get from A to B? But you got to know what B is, and then you can kind of organize your resources to get there, because it's hard to reach a target that you don't have. So now what happens is, as you start learning how to create more value, that extra money is not, hey, let's go have a party, let's go shopping, let's go buy a big car, a bigger house. You want to get into a wealth cycle. So the cycle is cash, asset, cash. Okay. So you save part of all your earnings, yours to keep. This is Ryle, the richest man in Babylon, right? Budget thy expenses, manage your cash flow, make your goal multiply. Step 3 of the 7 cures for a lean purse. All right. So that means, what did you had? So what did you paid for that book? Those Bibles. How much did you pay?
So just over $800. I rounded it to 1,000,
Right.
but just over 800.
So now, if you spent, you might put it on a credit card, but let's say if you spent every dollar that you made, would you have the $800 in savings to make that investment?
No
No
way.
way. So you can. So what happens is you have to under consume. So there's only 4 things you can do with savings. You can save your savings. You can consume your savings. You can lend your savings, or you can invest your savings. Right. And so you can't buy your way to wealth. It starts with savings. This is what like all these Keynesian brilliant economists get wrong. Think you can buy your way to wealth. That's all nonsense. And most people are screwed up because they listen to knuckleheads. Okay, don't get me started with that. But the
Okay.
so what happens is, step one, you got to have awareness. You got to track it. Okay, you've got to manage what I call a budget surplus, and then you've got to make your goal multiply. So once you have that financial independence number, when you hit above, let's say $5,000 a month, when you start to hit that, you don't change your standard of living. You don't go out and buy a bigger house. So we famous for that, right? We got to have a new car. Like a car payment is like a perpetual thing in a lot of minds of people I know, right? And or because we try to impress people we don't like buying stuff we can't afford, right? And just
Right.
giving our money away. And so what happens is, but if your goal, you got to have a goal of greatness as a family, and you got to want to be financially independent. And you got to say, well, all right, we want to get our financial independence number is $6,000 a month. So let's say your asset class you like is real estate, for example. So could you buy, let's say you could net, just pulling a number out, $300 a month, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you, your goal was 6,000. So if you had 10, and you were netting after the mortgage, everything, $300 a month, you're halfway there. So you would need 20 houses to hit that number. So if you could buy 2 a year for the next 10 years, you're out the rat race, aren't you?
Yep.
And see, so what happens is if you make more money, you can do what? You can compress that time frame. You got more money for the down payments, or you're improving your credit, and maybe you have, if you're buying them right, you might have equity, and now you can use other people's money or lines of credit. If you're investing in education, maybe you learn how to raise other people's money, maybe let them loan you money to acquire new properties from their IRA. You know what I mean? So you got to invest in your skill set. So the smarter you are, the less of your money needs, but you're trying to hit, you don't go until you hit that number. All that extra money goes to compressing your time frame. So it's going to take you 10 years. If you really get good at your business, you might be able to get it done in 4.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to have it now. Saying that, I'm not saying live in sackcloth and you can't go on vacation, you can't go to Starbucks. I want you to live the best life you can right now. But you want to set a nice, I still want you to go on a couple of vacations a year, because what you working for otherwise, right? And so
This is contrarian.
yeah, you work. You listen. I live follow something called Strategic Coach. Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach says, listen, until you double your time off, you cannot double your income, right? Because you're the number one asset. You got to take care of you. Your best investment is, one, in between your 2 ears. So it's your mindset. Number 2, your skill set. And number 3, your network. Okay. And so if you're in business, see, business ownership is lonely. So you got to get around other people that think like you think. You won't have that crabs in a barrel, because if you're in business, you can't get around a bunch of employees. Okay, because they don't talk. I was in a meetup, a thing this morning. We're talking about, we got to get together more, because one of the woman asked me, she's a coach, what is your revenue? I want to 5x my income. It was this year, and I was talking about, I threw out a number, and so you couldn't throw that number out if you're in a group of people with jobs, because you don't really have the ability to say, I want to, grow my income from 6 figures to a multiple 6-figure business, and how do I do that? By working on my marketing, by working on my leadership, by improving systems. So you have the control, have the ability to do that, and so you need to get around people that support that get that. Don't think you're bragging; you're just talking shop,
right?
Back and forth.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so that's it. So you gotta, the power of association is huge. I'm very controlling of what I watch, what I read, what I listen to, and who I hang around. I hardly watch the news. I mean, I just watch a little bit. I listen to sports talk so I can be interesting. I don't even watch financial news that much, because it's all a bunch of crap. And
yeah.
So, but I read a lot, and I read probably a book a week, a podcast a day, an audio book, a week. And so but I'm in the knowledge for profit business. So if you're going to be in the thought leadership business, you need to be in the knowledge acquisition business first.
Absolutely.
And so somebody said, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book. So I've determined that would never happen to me. And I happen to be a nerd, so I like reading. So, and I did get that. And my kids get that, you talk funny thing. I was going to go there, but I decided to leave that one alone. But
hey, it happens. Yeah. So we got to close up. I know we got to close it up, but this is what ends up happening. But I have one more question, but I think I have the answer to it. You said cash, asset, cash. To me, that means I take the cash that I have in hand. I'm going to buy an asset or invest in an asset that is going to spit cash at me, rather than an asset where I'm going to look at its equity down the line. Is that basically what that means?
You take that new cash, you save a percentage of that, and then you buy another asset that generates cash.
Okay.
So now you're in what I call a wealth cycle, where you're building assets that take cash flow. You take part of that cash flow, you buy another asset that generate more cash flow. What most people do is they get in a lifestyle cycle where they'll make more money, spend more money, make more money, buy a bigger house, or they're, because what people do is they'll go back to school. right? So now you go back to school, you're adding more debt to get a better job so you can pay more taxes.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
That just don't make any
and
sense.
so you're just working and you're making the banks rich, you're making the government rich because you work till April to pay them. And when you add it all up, and so you can never get ahead, and you're trying to save dollars that where the once you understand the monetary system, this is what people hoping cryptocurrency would do, but I'm still trying to see if it's going to work that way. But you're saving dollars, so that dollar you're saving every year you hold it, it buys less. So even though you think you got a $500,000 in your 401k, well, when you retire, it might buy the equivalent of $100,000 of stuff today because they're working at debasing your currency, so that my dollar buys less. So there's so many moving parts. See, the main thing I tell people: look, if you know what's going on, you'll know what to do. Most people have no idea what's going on. Okay, and so you always fall for the banana in the tailpipe. Which, and so that's a reference. Y'all millennials, that's a reference to Beverly Hills Cop and Eddie Murphy. Everybody said I looked like him when I was a cop.
I was around then. I was around then. I'm technically a millennial, but I was around for Beverly Hills Cop.
We're not going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe. So, all right. So you see, it's been too long. My silliness is coming out.
Yep.
But so Gerald, listen, how can tell them about how can they get in touch with you, Gerald? Where would you like them to go? Tell them about your podcast, your site.
Absolutely. So here is the best way to catch me. If you go to Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, you can just put in @BuyBlack Podcast and you will find me. My email is Gerald, GERALD, @buyblackpodcast.com. And the website, if you go to it right now, is buyblackpodcast.com. You will see a website that is only partially done because I'm literally building it from scratch myself. So I ate that cost, lesson learned, and I'm building it out right now.
Yep.
But failing forward, right? But I'm learning WordPress right now. I've got a splash page up there that is actually really nice looking, and we're going to build out the rest of it.
Teach me because
I'll do it. I'm in the process of it, man. 3:00 in the morning every night. I'm up here building this thing out. By the end of the year, I will have a product that everybody will be proud to go to and send their friends to. So we're going to make that happen.
Right,
but those are the places where you can find me.
All right. Well, listen, guys, thank you. We're a little long today. Sometimes if I'm talking, I'll just kind of let it roll. But listen, we appreciate you listening. So, listening. And so if you like the show, give us a like on iTunes. Please share. Remember, you can go in the show notes. We have a free ebook for our listeners called Financial Planning Has Failed, where we teach prosperity economics, alternative investments, written by my mentor, Kim Butler. And we're available if you would like a strategy session where we'll talk about, give you an idea of how some of the things that we teach will work for you, no obligation. There's a calendar somewhere on my site. You can just click it and schedule yourself for a 15-minute conversation. And listen, guys, thank you. And actually, I'll probably have another couple shows for the new year, but I hope you have after this show, it'll be after Christmas. So you guys have a Merry Christmas, and we will talk to you soon. And we're out.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed listening to that episode as much as I enjoyed recording it with Curtis. Before we get out of here tonight, I just want to circle right back around and remind you, BuyBlackPodcast.com is live. Check it out. Send people to it. Help me build out the resource list. Let's get this thing rolling. I'm really excited about that. All right, but hey, closing it out, I told you earlier that I would have a couple of resources for you from Curtis himself. First things first, if you want to learn more about the prosperity economics financial planning model, all right, Curtis has offered a free 15-minute direct consultation with him. If you check the show notes or you check the description that's below your podcast in this episode, I've got a link in there that'll take you directly to his to his webpage where you can sign up to do a 15-minute consultation, and that is free. Now, also, on top of that, if you are not the type of person who would rather start off with a consultation, if you'd rather just get the information and read it for yourself, the other link that you're going to see down in the description is a link to get a free ebook called Financial Planning Has Failed. If you just go to this website, you put in your name, email address, you will get a free copy of Financial Planning Has Failed. Read through that, and then afterwards, if you want to connect with Curtis, you can still make that 15-minute free consultation. So, hey, thanks for listening tonight, guys. As for me, if you have any questions about the things I talked about in this episode, specifically when it comes to sourcing products, making decisions on where to invest and what to pass on, I am always open. So many of you have reached out asking about the Amazon buyer feedback template. I'm shooting that out to you guys, and then just having conversations, man. This thing is taking off, and I really appreciate y'all being out there. I appreciate you emailing me, reaching out to me, connecting and talking with me. Keep doing that. Keep it up. I definitely want to hear from you. So connect with me, Gerald at BuyBlackPodcast.com, if you have any questions, comments, feedback about the show, or feedback about the website since it's up. Yes, I'm still talking about that. All right, that's it. I'm going to let you guys get out of here. I will catch you in the next episode.
Thank you for being part of the BuyBlack podcast community. If you're enjoying the show, I'd appreciate reading your 5-star review in iTunes. Join us next time for another empowering episode.